welcome to another episode of Game Theory, the #1 MMA DFS prep show in all of the land. I am your host, Monk, aka the Monkmatician, and in this very episode, we're going to be breaking down all 14 fights from UFC Jacksonville from a DK perspective, get you ready to go on those GPP tournaments, maybe some cash tournaments, and hopefully guide you in the right direction to make some loot this weekend, guys. We've got a couple of bangers. The main event, Topuria and Emmett, should be good. We've got Justin Tafa. Maybe he'll make weight at heavyweight. Who knows? Randy Brown fighting. Tafa the Ricci versus Jillian Robertson, a grappler's delight. Taira on this card. Shout out to my guy Rebecki. Cody Brundage is on this card as well. Trevor Peek is back. Man, there are some interesting fights this week, and I can't wait to show you the stats for them. So guys, before we get started, hit the like, hit the sub on this channel, and let's get right into the very first fight of the night, UFC Jacksonville. Let's go.
Show's about to start!
Fight! Cody Brundage versus Cedric Dumas. 8,700 for Brundage. Before we get into it, if you look at the top line here, I've got the KOs, subs, decisions, AWI's ass whoop index. Then we've got the records here. Exact is 3-round middleweight in this case. So the round and the exact weight class they're currently fighting at, I have the stats posted on the screen for those. So whatever record is highlighted, sometimes it'll be UFC record, sometimes it'll be this exact record. Those are the stats you're seeing. We've got the measurables above that, and here we go. Cody Brundage getting outpaced overall, but at distance he's killing it. 4 points to 1, but inside the distance it's basically 2 to 1 for his opponents. DraftKings points per win, he has 2 wins in the UFC at 3-round middleweight fights. 106.3, gives up 97.5 on average. Decent ceiling. So let's see, 50% of his total DraftKings points come inside the distance. Average bonus points per win, very good. 2 first-round wins, 90 bonus points apiece. One of his wins, over 100 points. 74% takedown defense is pretty good, but he only controls 29% of the grappling time he's involved in, and he's involved in grappling time in 73% of his fight time. 74 strength of schedule is very good. You want to see that number above 70 for the most part. 2 first-round finish wins, as we discussed, and he has been finished in the first round once as well. So 3 of his 5 wins have come under 5 minutes. Something to think about there when you're looking at DraftKings upside. 8,700, not a bad salary to play. Let's look at Cedric Dumas. He's got 1 fight in the UFC, and he got manhandled. I believe it was by Josh Fremd. Yeah, he got choked out, if I recall. Overall, he got outstruck basically 2 points to 5 per minute at distance. Inside the distance is much worse. 1.23 points a minute to 5.5. Let's see, very low ceiling. He gave up 109 points in that loss to Josh Fremd, and Josh absolutely did make the optimal lineup that week. If I recall, 0% takedown defense so far on 2 attempts. 57% of that Fremd fight was inside the distance, and Dumas controlled exactly 2.5% of that fight. That is a god-awful number. If Cody Brundage can wrestle him at all, I don't see how this is going to go well for Dumas. 67 strength of schedule, so not terrible, but not great either. And when 7,500 does win, guys, that salary makes optimal 63% of the time, so a pretty decent number there. I'm favoring the UFC. I would call him veteran. I don't know if 5 fights makes you a veteran. It certainly is more than a prospect. So give me the UFC, the guy with the UFC experience in Cody Brundage here. Shout out to Factory X. Shout out to Rebecki. One of his favorite fighters, and for good reason here. Cedric Dumas, I just need to see more from him, man. He got manhandled by Josh Fremd. So I'm looking at Cody Brundage this week. I will have a bit of Dumas because I think this one does finish inside the distance, because if Brundage does not get it done early, I don't know what he's going to look like in the second round. I don't know what Dumas is going to look like in the second round. There are a lot of unanswered questions here, and in fights like that, you generally want to have a bit of both sides. So take a stand. I'm leaning Brundage on this one, and yeah, I will have a bit of both in my lineups for sure. Speaking of prospects, one of my favorite prospects here is Taira, 9,400. I love watching this kid work. Absolute beast on the ground so far. Obviously, his strength of schedule leaves a bit to be desired. He is, as I said, a prospect, so he's not fighting, you know, top of the top tier guys. 69.54 strength of schedule is not terrible though. Let's see. He's beaten CJ Vergara, Jesus Aguilar, and Carlos Candelario. He's got a tough one here in Klidson Rodrigues, and I see this fight as a must-play fight. Both of these guys score pretty well for the most part. Rodrigues put up 131 against Shannon Ross. I mean, Shannon Ross is not exactly, you know, a world beater. In fact, whatever the opposite of that is. But Rodrigues also lost to CJ Vergara. It was an extremely close fight, split decision. He did outstrike Vergara by 10 strikes in that fight, but he did get out-controlled by a bit as well. So let's look at Taira here. 3-0 in the UFC. The stats that you see are for all three of those fights, even though he only has 2 3-round flyweight fights. One was a catchweight. I believe it was the Vergara fight. Vergara missed weight. 4 points scored per minute to just under 2. He's outscoring his opponents at distance. He's outscoring his opponents inside the distance. Has a rather low ceiling, though, for $9,400 this week. 106.5. That is not going to get it done when you have 28 fighters on the card. So with a few dogs, that could have the potential to be barking here. 63 bonus points per win. In 2 of his 3 wins, he has put up triple digits. 60% takedown defense. That is a bit subpar, however. Taira is a, prefers to be on the ground, prefers to be grappling, so he does not mind being taken down at all. And you kind of have to be a fool to want to get him on the ground unless you were sure you could control him, because he does control 80% of the grappling time he is involved in. I already mentioned his strength of schedule, etc., and the salary only is optimal 44% of the time it wins, so Taira has got to put up a decent score to get that value in order to be in the nuts lineup. Let's look at Rodrigues here. Klidson Rodrigues outscoring his opponents overall. At distance, it's more than 2-1. Inside the distance, it's almost 2-1. As I said, 131 points when he won. He allowed only 83 in his loss to Vergara, but he only would have scored 90.62 is what Rodrigues would have put up if he would have gotten that decision nod. But in his one win against Shannon Ross, 115 are the bonus points he put up because he finished him in just under a minute, if you do recall. Rodrigues, almost 50% of his fight time has come inside the distance, and he controls just over 40% of that fight time. Strength of schedule is 3 points worse than Tatsuro Taira. So yeah, no matter who you're picking for this fight, I think they have a great chance at making the optimal lineup. I will be picking Taira for the win just because, as I said, I'm a fan of this kid. I love watching him fight, and I'm excited to see where his career can go from here, especially at flyweight. Klidson Rodrigues has proven that he can put up a high score. I do like Klidson here. At 6,800, I think he has a decent chance of making the optimal in a win, even if he does not score well. Say if it goes to another split decision and he gets a 70 or 80 point nod. But I think Taira also could put up a decent amount of points. But at 9,400, you might want to look for a pivot as well. Don't go crazy on the exposure, because he is going to have to put up 110, 115, most likely, in order to pay off that salary. So I do love this fight for DraftKings, and you will see both of these gentlemen in some of my lineups this week.
Fuck little bodies!
Fight number 3, we've got Jamal Emmers taking on Jack Jenkins. Emmers 2-2 in the UFC, outscoring his opponents 3.5 to 1.87, so basically 2-1 at distance, outscoring them inside the distance 5.5 to 1.73. The problem is, in his 2 wins, he's only scoring 90.18 on average. He put up 71 against Hussein Ashkabov in his last fight. That was back in February. And back in 2020, he beat Vince Cachero and put up 108. So we're kind of a bit up and down, but on average, only 90 points, so that gives him a relatively low ceiling. 30 bonus points per win, so both of those wins were decisions. A 100% takedown defense so far on 9 attempts. He has put up over 100 points in 1 of those wins, and he does control 88% of all grappling time he's involved in. One of the best strength of schedules on the entire card. And when 8,600 wins, guys, as a favorite salary, 50% optimal is a fantastic number. Then we have Jack Jenkins coming off of a win over Don Shainis, in which he looked pretty good. 9,300, scored 97 points. So he did 10x his salary, but just barely. He did not make the optimal lineup. This time he is 7,600, so significantly cheaper, about $1,700 to be exact. And he's outpacing his opponents overall at distance is very good, almost 2-1. Inside the distance, he put up 5 points a minute over those 15 minutes of cage time. Only scored 97 points. However, he did control 72.5% of the grappling time. Does have one of the worst strength of schedules on the entire card, 56.57, but win 7,600 does win, guys. 67% optimal, almost 68. You put that with the 50% optimal at 8,600. This is a fantastic fight to target via salary voodoo, and I think it's a fantastic fight to target in general, because I do think one of these guys is going to score possibly enough points to become close to the optimal this week here. Jamal Emmers at 8,600. I mean, what does he have to score? Basically triple digits to be eligible for that optimal lineup, in my opinion. And Jack Jenkins probably has to do the same thing, but it is not beyond the realm of possibility here. So I do like this fight a little bit. I wish the projections were a little bit higher, especially for Emmers, but what can you do? He has made the optimal lineup in the past. I believe it can't be the Cachero fight because 2020, it had to have been 2023. Did he really make the optimal lineup at 71 points? I guess he was only 7,900 that week. We could check. Let's check. I'm going to edit all of this out. Jamal Emmers made the optimal lineup. UFC Vegas 69. In which he fought Hussein Ashkabov. Yeah, 7,900. He put up 71 points and made the optimal lineup. Jordan Wright also made the optimal lineup that week in a loss. He put up 46 points. So Jamal Emmers making optimal at 71 points, not even the lowest scoring guy that week. So that is a very interesting week, less than 550 total points that week. So, yeah, that's a long way of saying I wish Emmers scored a bit better. And I do probably think he beats Jack Jenkins, but Jenkins did not look bad. He's an exciting new prospect, only 29 years old, so I am looking forward to this fight. I'm probably going to pick Jamal Pretty Boy Emmers, but I am looking forward to this one, and I will have Jack Jenkins rostered as well, because 7,600, like I said, if he even scores 100 points, we are probably eligible. Hell, if it's anything like UFC Vegas 69, he just has to score 70, and he will make the optimal lineup. If you're not going to target any other fight, be sure it's this one that you put at the top of your list of fights to target. Trevor Peek going against Jose Chepe Mariscal. Chepe is a newcomer to the UFC, no Dana White Contender Series fights or anything, so his ceiling and his floor is just that of the average for the weight class. His strength of schedule is pretty bad at 63, but as we've already seen, not the lowest on the card. And when 8,000 does win, it makes optimal 53.19% of the time, guys. Chepe is 13-6, so almost 20 career fights, which you love to see. 6 KO TKOs, 3 sub wins, and 7 decision fights total. Let's see here. In his last 5, he is 3-2. He's also 30 years old for a debutant, 5'6", 70-inch reach. He is fighting Trevor Peek, and we are loving Trevor Peek this week, really this fight in general, because who knows what's going to happen. If it went out of the first round, I'd honestly be shocked, as I'm sure a lot of you would as well. But Peek looked fantastic. I mean, in his just under 1 round of fight time, he scored almost 14 points a minute at distance. He did get outclassed inside the distance for what it's worth, taken down 4 times in that fight, defending only 2 of those takedowns. 84% of his total DraftKings points in that 5 minutes came at distance, and inside the distance, like I said, he gave up almost 10 points a minute, but he did score 131 when he put out the lights, I believe, of Eric Gonzalez. Shout out to Eric Gonzalez, Ghost Pepper, no longer in the UFC. 90 bonus points for Trevor Peek. Only controlled 10.5% of all grappling time he was involved in, which was about 2.5 minutes, turns out. One of the worst strength of schedules on the card, this fight as a whole. Obviously, not good strength of schedules here. But when 8,200 does win, it makes optimal 51% of the time. Guys, I love Trevor Peek this week. I don't know much about either one of these guys, but we are going for the repeat for Trevor Peek. He's fighting a newcomer with no Dana White Contender Series fights or nothing on a 1.5 week notice. He was supposed to fight Victor Rodrigues, I believe. Trevor Peek was. Rodrigues had to withdraw. In comes Chepe to step in. So he's fighting this newcomer on a 1.5 week notice. I believe they got the call 6 days ago, so that would have put it last Wednesday. Yeah, a 1.5 weeks. I like Peek here. He's the cheapest favorite on the entire card at 8,200, and I will have an absolute ton of him, possibly even a metric ton of him in my lineups. And I'll even play some Chepe too in case Peek gets too crazy and shit gets wild and he takes the first L of his career. Likely it will be a KO, but yeah, so I'll give me some of both sides, but I'll have way more Peek than Mariscal. And yeah, this is going to have to be close to 100% fight. I mean, we're talking at least 70 to 80, right? Somebody's getting KO'd here, and I cannot wait to see who it is. Hopefully, Peek gets a second win, and it will pay off on 80% of my DraftKings lineups. Deja vu all over again. Zhumagulov. I feel like I've done this 3 times in 4 weeks. I don't know if that's just me or what. 9K this week. I mean, 1-4 in 3-round flyweight fights in the UFC. One of them was a catchweight, so he has 6 fights, but he's only 1-4 at this division. getting outpaced. Only scores 94 points when he won. Gives up 90 points when he loses. No wins over 100. Even in his round 1 victory, he still only scored 94 points. Controls 60% of the grappling time he's involved in. Decent strength of schedule. Blah, 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 dude. I've talked about this guy seriously 3 times in 4 weeks. We're moving on. He is fighting Joshua Van. The ceiling and floor is just that of the weight class on average. I have no stats for him. Again, much like the previous fighter, Chepe Mariscal, we have no stats. No Dana White Contender Series fights, no nothing. Strength of schedule is okay for a newcomer, 64. It could be worse. Usually these are sub 60. 61, 62, 7,200 when it wins makes optimal 65.5% of the time. Zhalgas by decision. Zhalgas loses a split decision. Either way, I'm not looking forward to rostering this fight. The winner probably scores 70. I don't think Zhalgas is going to get KO'd or finished, rather. Decision fight. Winner scores 70 points, and I will be hard passing on this one. The pick, I guess, is going to be Zhumagulov taking on the newcomer here. Only 8 pro fights. Meanwhile, Zhalgas has 8 losses, so that's how much more experience he has than this guy Joshua Van. So give me Zhalgas Zhumagulov with his Beatles haircut to get the dub here and his second win in the UFC. But I do not like this fight for DraftKings at all. Will have a little bit rostered just in case Van is a complete fraud. I'm not sure. Make sure you do your tape every week. I have not done mine yet. Or in case Zhumagulov gets bonked by a newcomer that we don't know much about. So give me a little bit of both sides. Honestly, probably a little bit more of Van than Zhumagulov, because Zhumagulov at 9K is effing crazy. That's a ridiculous price. I don't know. Yeah, 9K for Zhumagulov. It's like paying 9,200 for Muslim Salikov. Like, what are we doing here? Hard pass on this one, on the favorite on this one. Give me some of Van, though, just in case.
I don't even want to be around anymore.
Strawweight fight that I really like for DraftKings this week. Tabitha Ricci, 8,300. Jillian Robertson, 7,900. This should be a grappler's delight. Tabitha Ricci, 72.5% of her total DraftKings points come inside the distance, while 75.25% come inside the distance for Jillian Robertson. Those two numbers are some of the highest on the entire card, and we have a pretty good sample size here. We're showing 3-0 stats for Tabitha Ricci because her first fight in the UFC was at women's flyweight. You will not see those stats here, and she did fight Mannifioro, so it's almost better that we throw those stats out. I mean, who's looking good against Mannifioro? Not anyone. Meanwhile, the numbers you're seeing for Jillian Robertson are her UFC career. She only has 1 fight at strawweight, and so I did not want to just put 1 fight worth of stats up. So here you have her UFC career. Obviously, they are highlighted as I was talking about before. 5 points a minute for Ricci, getting only 1.85 scored on her. She's getting outscored at distance, but inside the distance, she is killing it. 6.26 points a minute, allowing basically 0, scoring 105.3 points per win. Very good ceiling of 118. One of her 3 wins was triple digits, 43 bonus points per win. She controls 99.23% of all grappling time she's involved in, and she's inside the distance 58% of her total fight time. Not a very good strength of schedule at 66, but she has not had to fight the best quality of competition, that is for sure. So I am very interested to see how she performs against Jillian Robertson. Jessica Penne, she got a win. Poliana Viana and Maria Oliveira, as we talked about. Let's see. Jillian Robertson, overall in her career, outscoring her opponents. At distance, not so much. Basically, 1.5 to 2 points allowed. But inside the distance, 2-1 for Jillian Robertson. 102 points per win. Decent ceiling for a strawweight here. I know she's fought a lot of her time at flyweight, but she did put up a decent score against Piera Rodrigues. 106 points in that fight. 67 bonus points per win over her 9 wins. One very impressive number for the division, for any division, but especially for women's flyweight / strawweight. 4 of those 9 wins over 100 points. Has a very poor takedown defense, but again, she's a grappler. She prefers to be on the ground. And if you take down Jillian Robertson, you better hope to God you know how to defend getting your back taken. Very good strength of schedule, 70.5. Even has 2 round 1 wins. Has been finished twice in round 1 as well. And when 7,900 wins, it makes the optimal 67% of the time. Guys, I love these numbers. Whoever gets their grappling game going is going to win. Honestly, I don't know who to pick. I'm kind of leaning Baby Shark right now. I don't really know why. Robertson could pull it off, obviously, via submission. I think either one of these women could win via submission, quite honestly. And I think it could finish inside the distance. The salaries are such that you could roster both of these women, no problem. Ricci's made optimal optimal. Robertson has made the optimal twice out of 5 fights. So yeah, I think you can roster either one of these women. I will have both of them in my lineup. Not a stack, I mean, but I will have each rostered separately in a decent amount of lineups. I'm going to be looking to be overexposed to this fight as a whole, just in case we get that first round submission. Somebody makes an error on the ground and they get their back taken and or arm triangled or something. Somebody could go to sleep in the first round. I don't want to miss out on that. I don't think this is going to be a very high-owned fight relative to a few other ones, so I will be looking to get over the field here. I'm picking Ricci, and the salaries are fantastic that you can get either one of these women basically at the same price, you know, 8,300, 7,900. So I do love that about this fight. Looking forward to it from a GPP perspective, hoping to get some leverage. Let's keep it moving. Lightweight fight between Mateusz Rebecki and Loic Radzhabov. We'll start with Radzhabov here, 7,800. We get a ton of possible upside for this underdog price. He did go 15 minutes in his first and only UFC fight against Esteban Ribovic. 6 points a minute, he allowed just over 3. Did get outscored at distance pretty bad, over 2-1. But inside the distance, these numbers are over 15 minutes. 8.57 points per minute, 0.97 points allowed. That is completely ridiculous. 120 points is what he put up in that win. Only 16.5% of his total DraftKings points in that fight came at distance. 77.5 came inside the distance. So that could be a huge edge if he is able to get his ground game going against Mateusz Rebecki. Did put up obviously over 100 points in that win. Let's see, controlled 93.67% of the total grappling time in that first fight. A very good strength of schedule for a guy that only has one UFC fight, over 70, and wins $7,800 wins, makes an optimal at a ridiculous rate of 70%. So Loic Radzhabov coming in here with a ton of DraftKings upside. Same thing with the salary. Absolutely love to see it. Mateusz Rebecki, 8,400. His fight with Nick Fiore went 15 minutes. He put up 5 points a minute, allowed just 1.5 back at him. Inside the distance, he did his own thing. 4.5 a minute, under 1 point per minute allowed, same as Radzhabov. Let's see here, 55% of his total DraftKings points came inside the distance, so no joke in the grappling department is what was displayed against Fiore there. Not that Fiore is very good, but I'm just saying he does have that game, it appears, for Rebecki. Controlled 93.72% of all grappling time he was involved in, which is almost an identical number to Loic Radzhabov's number. Strength of schedule is about 3 points less than Loic's number, and when $8,400 wins, it does make optimal 54.17% of the time. So there are some very good stats for both of these guys, even though they only have one fight in the UFC. Both of their first fights went 15 minutes, so we have an okay sample size, and both scored tremendously well for the most part. So I like this fight for DraftKings. I know I've said that a few times, but this seems to be a very good fight for a very good card for DraftKings in my opinion. So I will be looking to target both of these guys. Again, both of them are relatively cheap, 8,400, 7,800, not exactly interchangeable, but you know, pretty close. I do like the underdog here. I think, man, I don't know if I'm going to pick him to win, but I might be pretty close to 50-50 as far as my exposure goes. I just love the upside out of both of these guys. I think whoever gets their grappling game going is going to have success here. I'll probably, man, I don't know who I'm going to pick. I guess I'll take the dog and Radzhabov, but I would not be surprised if Rebecki came in here and did his thing as well. So I would advise rostering both these guys in GPP tournaments. I wouldn't roster either one in cash because I don't know who's going to win, hoping one of them scores pretty well. I assume this one will be pretty high owned because of the output that both guys put up in their first fight. Hoping to get that repeated, and we'll see if one of these guys makes the optimal lineup and pay off all that exposure.
I never met a fight I didn't like.
Welterweight scrap between Randy Brown and Wellington Turman here. 9,300 for Brown, who is the big favorite. He is 9-5 in 3-round welterweight fights in the UFC, getting outscored per minute, 2.79 points a minute to 3. Getting outscored inside the distance, 2.5 points to 2.7. And he's only averaging over these 9 wins, 82.5 points per win. Guys, that is not going to get it done at basically any salary, but especially at the 9,300 salary. I mean, 100-point ceiling is very low for the most part. Let's see here, 49 bonus points per win. Only 2 of his 9 wins he's hit triple digits. 71% takedown defense is pretty good. Controls just 40% of grappling time he's involved in. Decent strength of schedule. Other than that, I just think he's a bit overpriced this week for what we generally get for Randy Brown's output. I mean, he's put up, let's see, he put up 110 against Cowboy Oliveira back in 2021, probably one of Cowboy's last fights at the promotion. 76.5 against Gooden, 69.5 against Williams, 71 against Trinaldo, and then he got absolutely smashed by JDM. So, I mean, we're trending basically a very average or below average line here for total DraftKings points for Randy Brown. And now he's $9,300, the third most expensive fighter on the card. I will likely be fading Rude Boy Randy Brown. That said, Wellington Turman has been TKO'd twice in the UFC, and if he's going to lose, that's probably how he is going to lose. 2.54. The stats you see are his, I believe, all welterweight? No. He was fighting at middleweight, right? Right. Yeah, he spent most of his career at middleweight. This is the first time, actually, he's dropped down. I just don't know why my numbers aren't adding up down there. Either way, he is getting outpaced 2.5 points a minute to 3.36, getting outpaced at distance, getting outpaced inside the distance, and his points per win is even lower than Randy Brown. 6 points lower, to be exact. 76 per win, and he allows 101, just like Randy Brown does when he loses. Let's see here. No wins for Wellington Turman. He is, let's see, 3-4 in the UFC. No wins over 100 points. 43 bonus points per win on average. 50% takedown defense, but he doesn't mind working off of his back. He does like to throw up those arm bars, triangles, etc. Controls 50.5% of all grappling time he's involved in. And when 6,900 does win, an amazing optimal rate of 84.21%. So if Turman is somehow amisable to get Randy Brown down, or if Brown follows him to the ground and he puts himself in a terrible situation, allowing Turman to straight arm lock him like he did, say, Misha Serkinov, then, well, Wellington Turman's likely going to make the optimal lineup. But I don't see that happening. Randy Brown should be able to keep this standing, hopefully, anyways. But 9,300, just way too much in my opinion for Brown. I know I'm having flashbacks to last week in Jared Cannonier when I read all about how he's never scored this and he's never scored that, which was true. I wasn't lying. I wasn't making it up. I was just reading historical fight data. And then he goes out and puts up 150 points. So,
Oh, is that so?
Yeah, that is so.
yeah, I think the past 4 weeks we've had like 150 point score or 140 points. It's been Mackenzie Dern, Amanda Nunes, and then the most shocking of all, Jared Cannonier. So not expecting that type of performance out of Randy Brown is what I'm trying to say here. I will be looking to fade this fight, especially the favorite, although I will have some of Wellington Turman rostered because with a win at 69. Obviously that 84% optimal rate is very tempting, but I mean, like I said, if Randy Brown somehow gets to the mat with Turman and Turman is able to, flip the script and reverse this thing, get a submission going, I absolutely don't want to miss out on that. So give me a little bit of Turman, probably not much of Brown. The pick's probably going to be Brown, and we will keep it moving. Another welterweight battle here. Magny going against Philip Rowe. We'll start with Philip Rowe here. 7,700. He is 3-1 in the UFC. 2 of those were catchweight, but I decided to show all 4 of his UFC fight stats on the screen. Does get outpaced 2.77 points a minute to 4.5 at distance, 3.5 to 4 inside the distance. He's getting almost 2-1. 87 points per win. That's it. He gives up a whopping 105.5 per loss. 61.67 bonus points per win in those 3 wins, but only 1 fight so far out of 3 over 100 points. That is not what we're looking for. 53% takedown defense, also not what we're looking for. Controls just 31% of the grappling time he's involved in. Just a 65 strength of schedule. No wins or losses in the first round so far in the UFC. And when the $7,700 salary does win, makes optimal 64.5% of the time. Meanwhile, Magny coming off of a loss to Gilbert Burns, but he is 3-2 in his last 5. His only other loss to Shavkat Rakhmonov in that time frame. 8,500 for Magny. He is 18-7. 25 3-round welterweight fights in the UFC so far. That is mind-blowing. 3.65 points per minute, allowing just 2.36, outscoring his opponents at distance, inside the distance by almost 1.5 points. DraftKings points per win leaves a bit to be desired, 94.51, but still many more, about 7 more than Philip Rowe here. Decent ceiling, 41 bonus points per win, 38, almost 39% of his wins have been over 100 points, which is a decent number here. 64% takedown defense, controls less than 50% of the grappling time. Very good strength of schedule at 77.41. Only, I believe, one fight finished inside in the first round via win for Neil Magny. He has lost 4 of 7 fights in the UFC in the very first round. So 57% of his losses in the UFC have come in the very first round. Not to, and that includes his last one against Gilbert Burns. Rachmanov took the second round to get it done. But still, that is way too many first round finishes in my opinion. So I will have probably a bit of Neil Magny. There's not a ton that's jumping off the page here, except that Philip Rowe does allow so many points per loss. That's the only thing. But let's see, he put up 110, Magny did, against Rodrigues. But then before that, it was 75 against Max Griffin and 71, almost 72 against Jeff Neal. So not expecting a barn burner type of performance. So I'll probably be a bit under on the field for Magny. Philip Rowe, I guess I'll have a little bit, but again, just because he's so cheap, and I really like this salary kind of for salary voodoo. As I said, 65% optimal when it wins, but the problem is it going to win here against Neil Magny? 6'3" against, well, they're both 6'3". They both have 80-inch reach. Wow, that is that true? Yeah, okay, never mind. I was going to say, I thought Magny would have been the taller, longer fighter, but turns out I was incorrect. Yeah, both orthodox, and Rowe's going to be 3 years younger. I don't think any of that really matters. I like Magny here. I like his experience, especially at the UFC level where Philip Rowe only has 4 fights. So give me Magny for the win. Probably a low-scoring affair. Hopefully it goes to decision, so I don't really have to worry about playing it. But I guess I'll have a tiny bit of Rowe in case, because Magny does like to get finished in the first round. Fight! At middleweight, 3-rounder, Brendan Allen taking on Bruno Silva. Allen's 9,100 this week, and probably for good reason. He is 8-1 at the weight class in 3-round fights, 3.32 points per minute, allowing just 2.84. Basically even at distance, but inside the distance, he's outscoring his opponents by almost a point per minute. Only 94 points per win, decent ceiling, scores almost 60 bonus points in a win, and controls 53.71% of all grappling time he's involved in. Decent strength of schedule, and let's see here, that would be 3 out of 8 wins he has finished in the very first round. So I do like that percentage here. Unfortunately, 9,100 when it does win only makes the optimal lineup 31% of the time. So it generally has to score much better than the salaries around it. That's just how it goes for that salary. He is fighting Bruno Silva, 7,100, 4-2 in the UFC. 2.86 points a minute, allowing almost 4. At distance, he's outscoring his opponents, but just barely. But inside the distance, very lackluster. 2 points a minute, allowing over 4. Scores almost 100 per win, gives up 86 per loss. That's the other thing. Allen gives up 106 per loss, and that's, I guess, only one loss. That would have been against, I believe, Chris Curtis. Is that right? Second round finish? Yeah, Chris Curtis, absolutely, 106 points there. Probably Chris Curtis's better performances as far as DraftKings go. 78, almost 79 bonus points per win for Bruno Silva on average. 3 of his 4 wins over 100 points. So that is huge upside right there. If he is able to catch Brendan Allen with a power shot, then that's where it's going to end. I mean, we've seen it. Chris Curtis hit him with a counter, I believe, and dropped him there. So I don't even know if it was a counter. I got to go back and rewatch this. I haven't done any fight tape this week. It's Tuesday night, and I am very, very behind. So that's definitely one I'm going to go back and watch for sure. You can probably skip the Alvey fight. I definitely remember the Malkoun fight. My God. Disappointing there. I was all over Malkoun that week. It turns out that was a terrible, terrible way to play things, as we've seen it play out. 71% takedown defense for Silva is pretty good. 26.79% of the grappling time is all he controls. Basically the same strength of schedule, about a point less than Brendan Allen. I don't mind this dog pick here for Silva. I'm probably picking Allen to win because I've gone against him so much. He's just proven me wrong time after time after time. And Bruno Silva, I'm not really sure what to think against guys that know how to pull off submissions and are pretty good on the ground. He is underperformed. I mean, we've seen it against Gerald Meerschaert. We've seen it before, I believe. I don't remember who his other loss was that wasn't Alex Pajeda, but we definitely saw it play out like that against Gerald Meerschaert. Meanwhile, Brendan Allen, as you know, 4 submission wins, so that is his path to victory here, in my opinion. I think that's how he's going to get it done. So I like Brendan Allen, but I don't mind Silva in case he's able to bonk Allen early on in the fight. And at 7,100, that could easily pay off a salary. So I feel like I'm saying this a lot tonight, but I like a little bit of both sides. I'll probably be looking to go over the field is how I would play this personally on both sides. So whatever Allen's at, 30-some%, I'll probably go 10% over, maybe even more than that. And then Silva, same thing. At 7,100, I think we're getting a deal on a guy that has big DraftKings upside when he wins. 79 bonus points per win, 3 out of his 4 over 100. That's exactly what we're looking for when it comes to DraftKings. So can't pass that up at such a cheap price. Gabriel Santos taking on David Onama. Very interesting fight, priced very interestingly as well. 9,200 for one fight UFC. That's all the stats we have on Gabriel Santos. But he did outscore his opponent. It was Lerone Murphy in that fight. Looked very good. I mean, it was a very close fight. If you look at the stats the way I do it, he won that fight by a couple of points here. But as we know, the split decision did go to the still undefeated Lerone Murphy. But that said, Santos did go all 15. 4.23 points a minute, allowed just 3.38. At distance, got outscored by a point per minute, but inside the distance is where he shined. 6 points a minute, allowing just 2.47. And they did spend 60% of that fight inside the distance as well. Let's see. 80 points is what his opponent scored. Lerone Murphy scored 80.74 points. That's it in that win. 50% takedown defense, controlled 64% almost of that grappling time. Has a very good strength of schedule for just one fight in the UFC, 75.46. Very difficult to make the optimal lineup at 9,200. But that said, David Onama has some very poor stats. These stats are worse than I was thinking that Onama had. 2-2 in the UFC, and those are the stats we are seeing, not just his featherweight fights here. 3.5 points a minute, allowing almost 5. At distance, he looks pretty good, but inside the distance, very, very poor, allowing 5.5 points a minute. Scored 107 per win, allowed 115 per win in his per loss rather in his 2 losses. 80 bonus points per win is very good. One of his 2 wins over 100. Just a 45% takedown defense though, and he only controls 21% of all the grappling time he's involved in. Decent strength of schedule, and when M.O.N.K does win, obviously it makes the optimal lineup. Very good rate because it's so cheap. 3 out of 4 times. I don't know who to pick in this one. I'm leaning Santos, but honestly, I'm just not sure. It's the inside the distance pacing for me. 6 points a minute over 15 minutes, and you're David Onama allowing 5.58 points a minute. Yeah, I'm not for that. I assume Santos will be able to get his, if he can get his grappling off, then that's the way I'm going to be leaning here. 9,200, it is a bit much, but as we said, Onama over his 2 fights, I mean, Nate Landwehr, he allowed, let's see, that would have been 103, it looks like, 104 points. And against Mason Jones, he allowed many more than that, 126, it looks like. So, yeah, on average, 115. Man, if Santos could just rinse and repeat takedowns, this could be a long night for Onama. So I'm leaning Santos. I'm probably not going to have a ton of Onama. I mean, he's going to have to prove me wrong again. He's beaten Gabriel Benitez, Garrett Armfield. I believe Armfield was on short notice, and Armfield was up or down a weight class, I believe, as well. So yeah, give me Gabriel Santos this week. Hopefully he can get his ground game going and pay off that pretty expensive salary for only having one fight in the UFC at 9,200. We got a Southpaw versus Orthodox match here as well, so maybe some yam bags. We'll have to ask Lou Betya later in the week. But yeah, give me Santos, and I will be putting him in probably some GPPs and some cash games as well. Justin Tafa taking on Austin Lane, newcomer here. This is a pretty easy must-play fight, in my opinion. Justin Tafa taught me a couple of times now that you do not leave him out of your lineups. If he's going to win, it's going to be in the first round, and he's going to score about 103 points on you, it turns out. Ask Harry Hunsucker, ask Parker Porter. Here now we've got newcomer Austin Lane. He does have some stats. These are from his latest Dana White Contender Series fight, which I believe was last year. He did fight in another Dana White season, but I think it was back in like 2019 or something, so I just omitted those. Inside the distance, 4.14 points a minute, allowing 2.58. Let's see here, 85.5% of his total DraftKings points in that fight, which did go a bit less than 5 minutes, came inside the distance. 90 bonus points, obviously, in that win. Did put up over 100 points. Controlled 51% of the grappling time. Terrible strength of schedule, one of the worst on the card, maybe the worst, 57.73. So not very good. I mean, inside the distance stats, very good for Austin Lane. Other than that, Not great stat, but we don't have a ton of time here. Like I said, less than 5 minutes, so very, very small sample size. Meanwhile, we know exactly what Justin Tafa is and what he's going to do. 2 and 3 in 3-round heavyweight fights here. 8,800. One of them was catchweight because he was the first fighter, I believe, ever. Because, yeah, he did it before Chris Barnett. He was the first fighter to ever miss the heavyweight limit of 266 pounds.
You ordered Diet Coke, that's a joke, right?
Justin Tafa. So 1 catchweight fight. We are not counting that one here. Outscoring his opponents overall. I mean, we know what he's going to do. He's going to go for the first round knockout. If he hits you in the first round, you're going down, you're probably going to stay down, and he's probably going to get his hand raised. If it goes past that, I'm favoring Austin Lane. So it's just a matter of how much salary relief will you need. I will definitely be rostering some of Lane, but I feel like when Tafa wins, I'm just going to feel like that was a waste of 7,400. So I will have a bit, but I'm not going to be overzealous about it. I'm picking Tafa. I'm picking Tafa round 1 because that's what Tafa does in round 1. And I'm picking him to score 103 points, hopefully. And at 8,800, I mean, there's a chance he could make the optimal lineup at, 103, 104 points. Let's hope he can get it done. If not, like I said, if it does go past the first round, this could be sloppy. And I'm not expecting a very high score for Lane unless he can rinse and repeat takedowns. But I assume Justin Tafa's cardio will be absolutely dead by then. So give me a little bit of Lane, but probably the pick is Tafa round 1 KO. Co-main event of the evening, Amanda Ribas going against Maycee Barber. Barber only 7,300 this week, major underdog, does not historically score well at all. Getting outpaced overall at distance and inside the distance, she is outscoring her opponents 2.88 per minute to 2.77, but she's only scoring 77 DraftKings points per win, allowing 83 per loss. So not a lot of points in Maycee Barber fights at all. Only one win out of 6 did she put up triple digits, 46.67 bonus points per win, scores 64% of her total DraftKings points inside the distance, only a 40% takedown defense. And the interesting thing is she only controls 32% of all grappling time she's involved in. So, I mean, she's scoring 64% of her points in the distance, but she's only controlling 32% of that grappling time. It's kind of a crazy stat to think about. 7,300 does make the optimal 58% of the time it wins. Nothing really standing out for Barber here. The 40% takedown defense, the grappling time. I mean, 1 win over 100. Not really looking forward to rostering her. Let's see. 2 KO TKO wins, 6 fights have ended via decision for Barber, so 6 out of 8. Then we've got Amanda Ribas on the other side. You're seeing her women's flyweight fight stats. Only 3 fights at women's flyweight. That would have been Araujo, Chookagian, and then Paige Van Zant back in 2020. So those are the stats you're seeing. And she's been performing very well at flyweight. 2-1. Her only loss was to Chookagian. She's scoring 4.57 points a minute, allowing just 1.7. Inside the distance, it's 4 to basically 0. And Ribas is averaging 108 per win. She put up 115 against Araujo and 101 against Paige Van Zant. 60 bonus points per win. Both of her wins, as I said, over 100. Controls 95.75% of all the grappling time she's involved in. Very good strength of schedule. Difficult for 8,900 to make the optimal lineup, but again, it is pretty expensive here. I like Ribas, honestly. I mean, Barber, I don't know who's going to win. I'm picking Ribas. I think Barber can pull it off, but I don't think that she's going to perform well for DraftKings. So the only upside, in my opinion, is Amanda Ribas, unless she gets absolutely bonked like she did against Marina Rodrigues. But in that fight, she only allowed 88 points total. So that's not, well, that could be all right for 7,300, I guess. But, you still want triple digits in your winners just to feel good about making that optimal lineup. So give me the upside for Ribas here. 8,900 is not terrible. I don't know that she finishes Barber. Barber has yet to be finished in the UFC, so that could be difficult. But as I said, Ribas still finding a way to get it done, even in decision wins. So 4.57 points a minute is no joke. 96% control time is very, very good as well. So give me Ribas for the pick, but I don't really like this fight at all for DraftKings, especially the Maycee Barber side. Main event of the evening. Before we get into it, guys, thank you so much for watching. Please hit the like and hit the sub on this channel if you aren't already. Ilia Topuria 9,500, Josh Emmett at 6,700. Let's start with Josh Emmett, man. Known for his power, especially at 145. Topuria has been dropped hard when he did decide to go up to 155 and fight Jai Herbert, and I'd say Josh Emmett probably hits close to a 155er. That said, he has not dropped anyone since Dan Ige back in 2021. Didn't drop Calvin Kattar, did not drop Yair Rodrigues either. Add to that the fact he barely scores 2 points a minute. At distance, very, very low volume. Inside the distance, pretty good, 4.79 points per minute, but he only spends 20.65% of his total fight time fighting inside the distance, so not a lot of opportunity to get that 5 points a minute going. 73 points per win, guys, in 5-round featherweight fights for Josh Emmett. Granted, he has 12 fights in the UFC, but we are going on the 5-round featherweight fights here, in which he has 3 of them. He is 1-2 in those fights, not putting up the best numbers overall, as we said. Let's see. One of them was against Yair, and the other was against Calvin Kattar. I forget who the third one was off the top of my head. No one has tried to take down Josh Emmett in these 3 fights. He has spent only 8.76% of his total fight time fighting inside the distance. 8%. But he did control 96% of that total fight time. 76 strength of schedule is very good. No round 1 wins or losses so far at 5-round featherweight fights. That was very poor sentence structure. I apologize there. Ilia Topuria. Also, I should say before we move on, $6,700 is the worst salary overall to play. Still just sitting with 2 wins. Barely over a 4% win rate since 2021, but when it does win, guys, in both of those wins, 100% optimal. Always like to remind people of that. Ilia Topuria, most expensive fighter this week at $9,500. We do like that salary for salary voodoo, outscoring his opponents 3.85 to 2.5 at distance. Inside the distance, better than 2-1 as well. But he does leave a bit to be desired when it comes to DraftKings points per win, scoring only 98 points on average. That said, he put up 101 against Bryce Mitchell, 100 against Jai Herbert when he absolutely murdered him. Ryan Hawley put up 100 points as well. Damon Jackson and then Yusuf Zalal is the only one that's really bringing him down at 78. So right around that triple-digit mark is a very good, very good mark for any fighter. You would like to see it a bit higher than that, though, for 9,500. That said, 70 bonus points per win, spends 48% of his total fight time inside the distance, and he does control, 48% of his total DraftKings points have come inside the distance. He spent 50% of his total fight time in the distance and controlled 74% of that fight time. 3 of his 5 wins over 100 points, like we mentioned. 76 in his last 5 strength of schedule. Love to see that. 2 of his 5 wins, round 1 finishes. I mean, what else do you want to see? Ilia Topuria is out there to take your head off. He is undefeated at 13-0, 5-0 in the UFC, and this is going to be no different. I know everyone's writing Josh Emmett off. I mean, he's 38 years old, coming off of a loss to Rodrigues, in which he did not look great, in a very close fight in which a lot of people think he lost against Calvin Kattar. The stats would agree with those people. Very close fight, but, I mean, he got outstruck in that fight. No knockdowns, no takedowns, and no control time. So, very close fight. Emmett just happened to get the nod that week at 7,400. I'm leaning Topuria here. I think this is this guy's time. I think he is the future. If he stays at featherweight and does not go back up to lightweight, that would be ideal. And I think he can bonk Josh Emmett for sure. I think Emmett's getting up there in age, and the chin starts to decline. Not that he's been knocked down at all. I'm just saying. It does start to decline. In fact, he's never been knocked down in his, that's his last 5. Let's see about his UFC career. He has been knocked down once in his UFC career. I don't have who it was off the top of my head, but that number is not 0. So I'm excited for this one. I'm excited to see if Topuria can finish him. He's going to be the taller fighter, about the same reach. Emmett can still crack, that is for sure. Expecting a stand-up war. Not expecting this one to go all 5, so I'm favoring Topuria. I will have him rostered at 9,500, but you cannot fade Emmett completely. You cannot fade Emmett. The last thing to go, as they say, is power, and Emmett can crack. Ilia's been cracked before, like I said, against Jai Herbert, so you never want to just X out somebody like Emmett just because he's at a terrible salary of 6,700. So give me a little bit of him, but I'm favoring Topuria in this one. Before we get out of here, guys, just a couple of more pieces of business. Let's throw it over to Monk for CM Monk's picks for UFC Jacksonville.
Oh, fuck. A clown pewter? Fuck that. Probably got no game.
All right, guys, CM Monk's picks for UFC Jacksonville. Last week, not so good. A losing week. just barely 45% win rate. We are still over 60.5% on the year though, so that's what we're looking for. Cody Brundage over Cedric Dumas by finish. Tatsuro Taira decision. Emmers decision. Peak finish. Zhumagulov finish. Interesting. Tabitha Ricci finish. Rebecki decision. Randy Brown finish. Philip Rowe finish. Brendan Allen finish. Gabriel Santos decision. Justin Tafa finish. Amanda Ribas decision. And we finish it off with an Ilia Topuria inside the distance finish. You absolutely love to see that. A ton of favorites this week. Obviously, blue means favorite. Yellow means dog. 13 favorites. See ya, Monk. Way to go out on a limb there, bud, and pick some real, have some real hot takes on these fights. I really appreciate that. So 13 favorites this week, many less than we have been used to in recent weeks. We're usually in the 4 or 5 dog picks, so tons of blue this week. Could be interesting if it plays out like that. And yeah, that's how CM Monk sees it. UFC Jacksonville. One more thing before we get out of here. Let's find out who Monk's pick of the week is. The most owned, no nonsense pick of the week, UFC Jacksonville. The most owned, no nonsense pick of the week, guys. We are going out on a limb. We're going to give you a wild fight that could end either way, but I'm picking Trevor Peek, 8,200. I'm looking for a repeat performance this week over a newcomer who has had a week and a half worth of notice to fight this guy. Trevor Peek absolutely dominated. 130 points in his last fight, almost 131 in that first round finish. I think he can repeat again here against a guy who, again, is on short notice and a newcomer to the promotion. So give me Trevor Peek, the cheapest favorite on the entire card for the most owned, no nonsense pick of the week. I am going to have a ton of him rostered because I don't want to miss out on those points. Hopefully we get something better than like an 80-point win. But yeah, give me Trevor Peek, 8,200 for the most owned, no nonsense pick of the week. All right, guys, we did it. Thank you so much for sticking around with me. Hope you enjoyed the 14-fight breakdown of UFC Jacksonville, and I hope I see you at the top of the leaderboards this week. I mean, 14 fights, we got 28 fighters here. Should be very interesting lineups as far as that goes. I think a lot of finishes could happen. I think a lot of fights could go either way. You saw CM Monk. He likes the favorites, but I will be on a couple of more dogs than he will. You can rest assured of that. So, guys, be sure to stick around. Check out the MMA Engine. Check out Happy Hour later this week. And I got nothing else. Unnamed Nickname Show on Thursday, 10 p.m. Central. Be sure to check that out as well. That's a live show that I do where we just BS about nicknames. And yeah, for about an hour. Should be very fun as usual. And that's it. I want you guys to enjoy the fights. So, enjoy. And we will see you in the next one.